All right, hi everyone, this is Dr. Patrick. This is officially the most low-key introduction to one of our classes. We're going to be talking about chemistry today. I've got a dog sniffing on me and growling at me, so it's we've got lots of distractions going on. We've got a cat that keeps jumping up. But anyway, I'm here with Miss Kim, who is our science teacher at Dreaming Spires. And right now, today, we're going to talk about the chemistry class. And so I'll just give them a little bit of background about you, although it's on the About Us page. Kim and I met through our local co-op for homeschool. She's taught a bajillion, that makes you sound old.
Sometimes I feel old when I'm talking about
She's only been teaching a very short and very important time.
Only the last, going on 19 years of...
Your oldest kid is 20.
Will be 24 in a couple months.
24. So she's been homeschooling for a little while. And your youngest is 12. And so still keeping up with, the homeschooling things. She was in the military, in health, and also then you're a neonatal
nurse and pediatric home care. Yep.
Yeah. So you come at it from a really practical point of view. So originally it was the practical thing, and then you had to start homeschooling. You've been co-op science teaching for a really long time. No, only a very short time. And anyway, I roped her in to teach science for us because she's taught years and years and years of Apologia, which I think is a fantastic curriculum, but it's not living books enough for Dreaming Spires. So I said, if you can turn that kind of science course into a living books course, I'll have you in Dreaming Spires. And she did such a great job that first year with biology that
my favorite subject.
By next year, you're going to do 4 for us.
Yes.
So general science, biology, chemistry, and conceptual physics. But today, we're just going to talk about chemistry. So the first question is, let's talk about how you living book size, or shall I say Dreaming Spires eyes, chemistry.
Well, one of the things that I do is we read quite a few different books. A couple of them are periodic tales, our favorite one. We read this one through the whole year, just maybe 5 or 10 pages each week. And then we add other books like Elements of Murder that talk about some of the different...
I recommended this one because it's my daughter's favorite.
And as you can see, there's much information in here. I sometimes would worry as I would sit different places like the DMV and I'm reading Elements of Murder and I have this many bookmarks in it. Just need to ask, are you a teacher?
The DMV, because not everyone knows, Department of Motor Vehicles.
Where, you sit forever and probably not the place you want to be reading the Elements of Murder. Anyway, so this just talks about how different elements have been used through history and how they've been used to harm people, or how, as in arsenic and old lace, they were used to actually find people who were poisoned and they didn't know it. And so the kids find it super fascinating, and it's a good, quick introduction into different elements and just a nice broad overview. And then we start getting a little bit more in detail. We talk about the color mauve and how different experimentations have added to our... just our life, having the color mauve by mixing something with coal tar and all of a sudden coming up with a different color is super cool. And how that made the scientist very, very popular. He traveled between the UK and the US, promoting his color and his scientific technique and how these different things that he did. And then different ways that coal tar, that it was one point always just thrown away, had a revival of, there's different things we might be able to find out from this. So it kind of gives a practical point of view to some of the different parts of chemistry, whether we're talking about here being in Texas, the oil industry, we talk about hydrocarbons and how the distillation processes work. So we can bring in real life things into our chemistry that we're talking about. And so all of our different books allow us to do that.
So it's living books, but it's also living ideas then.
Yes.
Okay, so one really important question. Is it mauve or mauve?
I call it mauve. But I won't correct you if you call it mauve, I guess.
I don't know. Well, you were mentioning there about experimentation and things. So labs is always a big question. about how people do labs when you're online. So how do you do labs in your chemistry class?
So I will assign a lab. We do at least 4, and depending on interest and excitement, we may do more. I will give the students a supply list and a procedure list, and usually most everything we can use is something you can use from home. For example, we explore the idea of moles by using a large bowl of water and pepper and a little bit of dish soap, and then we're able to mathematically equate an idea of what a mole is based on the molecules of pepper. And so we're able to do that at home and then discuss it online. Another one we do is talking about chromatography. Around the same time we're talking about the color mauve. We get a really expensive pen and a fairly inexpensive pen, and we allow those to use paper chromatography for both of those and see which pen has more color to them, which pen has the more intense color. Is it worth buying the more expensive pen or the less expensive pen? And so we use it also for practical indications.
I'm very interested in that. I love my pens.
Me too.
She says the more expensive is the better. Scientifically.
That's right.
All right, so you said something else there that twigged another question. You were talking about equations. So how much mathematics does someone need to have in order to do chemistry?
So I think basic algebra or basic algebraic understanding, maybe if you're in algebra, you should be able to understand the equations. If it is something a little bit beyond you, I have kids who struggle with math, so I understand that sometimes math is a struggle. Actually, it's a struggle for me. And so I will go through the different ways of equations. I will go through a couple different slides on how to do it, and then it'll be assigned in the homework. And then I'm happy to sit down with someone over Skype or over Course Sites and go through the homework if that helps. I post the homework the week afterwards where they can look at the homework and then go through it themselves also, and then call me if they have any questions.
Right, so it's not like you're going to throw them at the deep end and say, well, work it out yourself.
No.
You're there to help them through the mathematical. And like you said, you've had, I mean, this happened last year in our co-op. We had a student whose math was really quite poor, and you did have to have extra sessions with him to get him over that issue that he was having with his math.
And I completely understand the maths issue in chemistry. Actually, every time I teach chemistry, I have to redo the formulas myself and remind myself, because my brain thinks not as much mathematically. I went all the way through calculus in university, but it's just something that I have to remind myself. So I totally understand if a kid needs some extra help. I'm happy to do it because I've just redone all the problems myself every year.
And the last question, give us a kind of overview of how you would do a typical week with your chemistry, starting with your 1 hour live class.
So we'll do our 1 hour live class. There'll be different slides on whatever subject we're using. For example, if we're doing acids and bases, we'll talk about we'll define what an acid is, what a base is. We'll look at what indicators are. We'll discuss some of the different reactions between acids and base. We'll discuss what a salt is. And then for homework, sometimes I'll assign videos. There's a couple really great videos that'll explain a little bit more in depth than what I can do. Then I also recognize that we have different types of learners.
Yes.
And so some people need to hear it a couple different times. Some people need to read it. So we're getting it in the book. We're getting it online through our slides. And then we're also sometimes watching interesting videos that will apply to that chemistry concept. And then usually I'll have a few study guide questions. We usually read 2 books at once. And so we read the book that we're reading all through the year, and then we have a separate book. So they'll turn in 2 narrations. They'll turn in study guide questions and practice problems. And
it's about 4 hours of homework.
It is about 4 hours of homework. So I don't do my other classes. I do vocabulary words. I don't actually do vocabulary words in this one because it would add that much more, because the time it takes to do the practice problems takes a little bit longer. And I think those are a little bit more important by this point.
Right, okay. Well, I think that's all we were going to talk about, really, isn't there? Of course, if anyone has any questions, they can email me or use the contact form on the website, dreamingspiresHomeLearning.com, or if you're in the UK and following the UK system, it's .co.uk. We just briefly mentioned that you use a lot of the past papers for GCSEs to pull out some of the questions. So those of you in the UK, if you're wondering, does this help prepare in this way? Because it's so different from any revision guide that you can buy from Amazon or whatever. And yeah, it is totally different, because instead of learning things from sort of the top down, where you get the information and you try to cram it into your body, instead we're trying to get it into the brain and then drawing out, that's what this equation's asking. And then hopefully the light bulb will go, oh, I actually get it. I understand what the purpose of this question is. But you do then, once you've been doing it through story and through application, then you say, this is the kind of question on the exam that you'll see where this is appropriate.
And I think it gives you a hook to hang on to. So if we have a story, if we have a video, if we have something that we've been discussing in class, and then you see that in the revision guide, you're like, oh yeah, okay, so that's when we were talking about Mauve. Okay, so that's what that means. And then you can kind of move on from there.
All right. Okay, so anyway, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, because Miss Kim will be back to talk about biology, general science, and the new conceptual physics that's coming out for 2019-2020. And I mean, this was quite a good one to start with, because we kind of covered a lot of general stuff about the way you do science. And maybe the next ones can be a little bit shorter, because you don't have to cover all the same ground. Okay, I'm going to reach over and stop the recording now. Okay, see you soon.